If there was ever a video game character who needed no introduction, it would have to be Mario and Pikachu and Sonic. But somewhere in that list is Pac-Man. The early games had absolutely no plot, just dots to eat, ghosts to avoid, and fruit to also eat. But as time went on and video games evolved, so too did the good old Pac. Fast forward to the Pac-Man World series, probably one of the most underrated platforming series I've ever had the pleasure of playing. I grew up playing Pac-Man World 2, and as a child, it was one of my favorite video games. Another to add to the list of games I love replaying, and one that as an adult, I was looking forward to playing through again. But that involved playing through a series of other games that I had not played before, starting with the original Pac-Man World for the PS1. Now look, I get that maybe for its time, this was another banger to add to the list of banger platformers, but I do not like the first Pac-Man World. The controls, like a lot of the controls for PS1 games, are clunky, irritating, slow, and heavy. When a lot of the level design requires to think fast and keep moving, it contradicts itself. The story is simple enough, and I like the game's personality. The ghosts of Spooky Island are throwing a little shindig after kidnapping Pac-Man's family. Talkman, a robot version of Pac-Man who wants to take over as the main Pac-Man, gets all angry when he realizes Pac-Man is on his way to save his family. And yeah, then we're going around saving his family. Pac-Man doesn't need a plot. We don't need to know why his villains are a bunch of ghosts or how he and his wife even have kids in the first place. In fact, I don't even know what Pac-Man is. He just is. And that's the best compliment I can give this game. It doesn't care about making sense. It's a video game through and through. The controls suck, but it looks great. The level design itself is hectic and creatively made to keep you constantly looking around for fruits and pellets to collect, secrets to discover, but enough enemies on the screen so that you can't just look for them while standing still. But the problem is, and I can't stress this enough, the controls suck. Pac-Man has this butt bounce that is meant to keep you jumping and moving without losing momentum, but when you try to do it, Pac-Man takes a second to actually butt bounce, and it leads to a lot of frustrating errors during more precise platforming sections. His regular jump doesn't help because even that is way too floaty, and by the time you land on the next platform, it's either moved away already or something has attacked you, leading to your death. I'm gonna be completely honest here, I only played the PS1 version for like an hour before I got to this ship, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out what to do, so I decided to play the remake. But first, let's look it up on the old YouTube and see what in the name of Miley Cyrus was I supposed to do here. Okay, so he's just collecting shit. There you go, what the? 23 years later, we got Pac-Man World Repack, a remake of the original game with improved visuals, improved controls, and all the other nooks and crannies that come with remakes. And what do I think of it?
No, sir, I don't like it.
There's a lot to like here. I think Pac-Man moves way smoother. The game looks great. It has an easy mode, which I use a lot because damn, this game is hard. Like, if you can get through a single level of this game without dying, I tip my dick to you because I spent so much time just dying. And then the part with the ship that I struggled so much with in the original is completely different now, which is a plus for me, but I mean, it goes to show, it's just not fair. The boss fights are all a plus as well. They're surprisingly challenging, and sure, a lot of them are. Look at the enemy's pattern and react accordingly. Like I said, the game is still constantly challenging you. Tons of enemies will bombard you mercilessly. The platforming challenges are actually a lot of fun to get through, and the game stays so fast paced while expecting you to keep up or die. I really like a lot that this game brings to the table, but there's just so much I don't like. While the original game had voice acting that added so much to the charm of the ghost, and now we have this Animal Crossing sound effect instead.
Pac-Man's here on Ghost Island! The Pac-Man! I mean that pathetic fool, trying badly I might add, to impersonate you, who is clearly the real Pac-Man.
I really don't like it when games do this. I find it irritating and I don't mind reading, but I've always found the use of sound effects in place of voices annoying, especially when the original already had some okay voice acting. The music also honestly kinda sucks. There are some levels that I guess have okay music that just kind of blend to the background, but at worst, most of it is kind of grating, and I found myself playing on mute while having a YouTube video on in the background. The butt bounce is still as slow as it was in the original, which I don't understand why they kept it that way. The rev roll that Pac-Man can do never feels like it has any any weight or speed to it, and I just never found it fun to use it in regards to platforming. Also, there's so much backtracking. I hate backtracking in video games, and so many of this game's collectibles are, oh look, a button, but you can't press it yet, go push this button a little bit ahead, now go back and push this button, and now go back again, and there's the collectible. And it doesn't just happen once or twice or a couple of times. Almost every single level consists of these kinds of quote-unquote puzzles, where you're just going back and forth in one section to get a fruit, and then you move on to the next area and do it again. I ended up just running from one end of the level to the next while ignoring collectibles and enemies because I was getting so bored just backtracking non-stop, and most of the time I had way more fun when I didn't have to do this. Most of the platforming, aside from the butt bounce and rev rolls, still feels decent. There's levels where you're running from something or basically just running a gauntlet to get to the end, and it feels good getting to the end of a challenging stage, and personally that overshadowed the feeling of wanting to get any collectibles. One major gripe that I have with the remake that the original actually did good is the shadow below Pac-Man. You see, for the most part, Pac-Man World is a 2D platformer, but you're not restricted to moving just left and right. You can move in all directions, even when you're in the air, and this leads to perspective being the worst enemy in the game. There were so many times where I was sure I was going to land a jump, but I didn't. When I was running in a straight line and I missed a platform and unfairly died, all because Pac-Man doesn't have some kind of shadow or indicator right underneath him to show me where he's at. This is a thing that games solved a long time ago. So many games with this perspective give you a shadow or a light that always stays right below you, so you can tell where you're going to land and you can move around appropriately. I mean, good gravy, even the original had a shadow underneath Pac-Man to be able to tell where he's at in terms of dimensional plane or whatever it's called. And this might not seem like a big deal, but when it leads to some unfair deaths and you find yourself starting levels over, all because the game doesn't have this one simple feature, it becomes way more of a chore to play through. And I didn't even finish the game from the irritation of certain jumps of sections and not wanting to replay through that irritating section again, which is a shame because the game really does have some creative level design. I said earlier that Pac-Man World is a video game through and through, and it doesn't care about making sense. Pac-Man is on this island to save his family, but the game doesn't stick to the island theme at all. Sure, at first it does, but then you find yourself on a space station or in a circus, and the game just has fun with it. There's this level where you're racing carts, or this level that was one of my favorites where you need to run away from a mummy, but the camera is in the perspective of the mummy chasing you. The game is filled with creativity, and it sucks that simple features like the no shadow, a shitty butt bounce, and an unsatisfying rev roll fill it with moments of irritation instead of satisfaction. But if you're watching this, you already know there's a sequel, and not only did it improve the gameplay in every single way, spoilers, I legitimately think it might actually be one of the greatest platformers to ever exist. Pac-Man World 2 is a vibe from the moment it opens up. We got this classical song playing while the ghosts sneak around Pac Village and cause a ruckus. They steal these golden fruit from this tree, which opens up a hole in the ground and unleash Spooky, a centuries-old villain who is set on destroying the Pac people. The next day, this old dude is like,
Terrible news!
And he gives Pac-Man the lore update, letting him know that Spooky was defeated, and we get this image, which I think should be put in an actual museum. Look at this little guy. I love this little guy so much. So it's up to Pac-Man to find the golden fruit and stop Spooky and save the Pac Village, and bam, perfect, simple story. The game looks incredible even to this day. There's so much color in every level, and even if you're not going out to space or a circus, I think what this game goes for, it completely pulls off better than what the original went for. The gameplay here is perfect. Like, I'm not kidding, I'm not exaggerating, I 1000% mean it when I say if you like platformers, this game is perfect to play. Pac-Man runs at a good speed, his jump is super responsive, the rev roll feels good to use and actually shoots you at super speeds, the butt bounce is incredibly fast but still somehow really good and responsive, and the controls good, and you can just butt bounce forever and keep the speed going. The collectibles don't involve as much backtracking this time around and are actually just scattered around or hidden away, and require some exploring, but that's not always the case, and we'll get to that. I honestly want to keep gushing about this game, so let's go through all the areas you explore and I'll give them a number out of 10, like I did with the Thai games, which you can watch on my channel. The link is in the description and also in the comments. Like and subscribe. The game starts us off in these green grassy mountainsides with giant Pac bears to avoid and little rivers to swim through. The puzzles are basic and this is the game at its easiest, but it's meant to be the tutorial and it does more than a good enough job at teaching you the mechanics while giving you a fun landscape to explore. At the end, we face off against one of the ghosts as he controls this giant robot frog, and the music is nothing but bangers. 10 out of 10. Right after this, we head into the Bedoing Woods, which always gives me anxiety because heights make me nervous, and the game kills it when it comes to setting the atmosphere, and it makes you feel like you're way up in these giant trees. You can use the butt bounce throughout these levels, and there's some intense gameplay if you're not a fan of heights, but it's still fun. There's saws to avoid, fires to also avoid, very precarious jumps to make, and the levels start off during the evening with the lighting adding a lot, but then near the end of the area, it's nighttime and it's all dark in the distance, and as a kid, this gives me the spooks, but because also as an adult, well, it still scared me, but I really do appreciate the way the nighttime adds so much to making the platforming feel intense, because a small misstep and you're gone into the dark. And again, the music, perfection. Out of 10. After another easy enough boss fight, we head off to the snowy mountains, and this is my second favorite area in the game. There's a frozen river to climb, and I like the animations of Pac-Man misstepping on the ice. Every jump feels like you barely make it. There's this avalanche that you need to outrun. These rams that need to, like, you got to rev-roll into the rams, but also the rams, they don't just run into you, they rev-roll into you. That's funny right there. You get this pair of ice skates to ride down the mountain, and this is a highlight, and the controls are again so damn perfect, and it's all so smooth. And the boss fight is easy but fun, and the music. 10 out of 10. Right after escaping the snowy mountains, we head into a volcano, and this is my second least favorite area in the game, but I still think it's solid. There's some dig dug enemies in here. Avoiding the lava leads to a fun enough challenge, but I personally don't think the game does anything special with this area. It's just a simple platforming area, and after the dangerous highs of the forest and the fast-paced gameplay of the snow area, this feels more like just a lava-themed level, just to have a lava-themed level. Even the music is honestly at its least memorable here. The best I can say is that the boss fight for this area is actually where the difficulty ramped up a bit, and I struggled to stay alive here, but I do like the boss fight. 7 out of 10. Next up is the water level, and I hate these levels. I hate almost everything about them. It's on rails, and sure, the controls are decent enough. I like the design of these sharks. I think they look funny, but the areas are just boring. Each level feels like it drags on, and when the best part of your game is the fast-paced platforming, and you replace that with this, it's gonna be jarring and it's gonna suck. And don't even get me started on the submarine levels that drag on for so long. Why do the submarine levels drag on for so long? The boss fight is this big ass submarine, and it's not the worst. And I will say, if you ask me to sing the songs for this area, I can easily do that. They're all gameplay wise, this is the lowest point of the game. 4 out of 10. And finally, Spooky Island. And oh lordy lord, where do I sign up to get an entire game based on Spooky Island? It takes the best of all the challenges so far. The butt bouncing jumps, the rev roll, the tons of enemies just attacking you, the jumps that feel like you barely make it, the ice skating, except this time it's a rollerblading, but it's still as fast paced and responsive. The enemy design, this evil tree is sick. The puzzles are fun to solve. The horror aesthetic, when Pac-Man gets all the fruits and it's all cinematic and he turns all gold, and I mean, for being a yellow ball of cheese who turns into a golden ball of cheese, he looks cool as feck. And the final battle, I actually struggled quite a bit, but I was still having fun. And the music is hands down some of the best music in platforming gaming, and I would put it up there with the best that even Nintendo would offer. 15 out of 10. Best collectibles in the game is these Namco tokens scattered literally everywhere, and the more you collect, the more games you unlock in this arcade. You got Pac-Man, you got Pac-Attack, you got Pac-Mania, you got Mrs. Pac-Man. I didn't unlock half of them because I didn't get enough tokens. You're gonna have to go buy the game and try these fucking games out yourself. When you beat a level, you can go back and do these time trials, which give you more Namco tokens for beating them. Overall, Pac-Man World 2 is one of the most relaxing and fun experiences you can get as far as platformers go. Is it perfect? No, but it works as a video game to near perfection. I never experienced any bugs besides this one and this one, and I can easily see myself going back to replay this one on a random slow lazy day. Good job, Pac-Man World 2. I'm excited to see where the series goes from here. Pac-Man World 3 kinda sorta sucks. You know how all the games we played as kids tried being darker and cooler and edgier as they went on? Ty the Tasmanian Tiger 3 had a darker tone, and that was silly. That game sucks. Jack and Daxter 3 was all dark and serious, but that one actually pulls it off. We'll cover that in a different video. Like and subscribe. Pac-Man World was not the series I expected to get a dark and gritty sequel, but oh boy it did try, and oh boy it did not pull it off. So, during Pac-Man's 25th birthday, which is also a celebration of 25 years of Pac-Man, cool, Pac-Man is teleported away to some apocalyptic sewer world, where an old friend Orson is recruiting Pac-Man to save his homeworld, where all the ghosts are from, because an evil dude Erwin is trying to use the power from the ghost world to destroy everything or something or whatever. The story is very boring, and there's voice acting now, but it's very bad. All the characters sound like they needed more takes, and the dialogue is cheesy and lame to the point of it being borderline cringe. I just ended up skipping every cutscene.
You didn't happen to see the... Oh, thanks, Snooky. Happen to see any sign of the birthday boy?
Did someone say cake?
You suck!
That brings us immediately to the gameplay, and the gameplay is on a spectrum, like myself, of barely being okay and being absolutely mind-numbing. While the previous games embraced and even perfected the platforming genre, this game was made by different developers, and they decided to make it a beat-em-up, a really boring beat-em-up, where you can do this, where you can collect these little balls and do this, and where you can play as the ghost. You rescue them and maybe you do some of this. Or maybe you do some of this.
Kinda slow. It's 'cause I'm busy thinking of all the things I'm gonna do to you.
Or if you're like me, you get extremely bored of the gameplay by the second hour, and then you just run through the beat-em-up sections because it's better to just avoid them than to do it at all. On top of the normal creatures you beat up around the levels, there's also these portals from the ghost world opening up everywhere, and you need to collect these big pellets to turn them blue and eat them. They're kind of like the classics, you know, like the original games. It's cool, but too bad these parts are so slow. You eat them all, and you need to wait for the next group to come out of the portal, and then you eat them, and this is no challenge. There's no satisfaction. You're just doing something for the sake of doing it. You're just passing the time for the sake of... This game is like 7 hours long because of how many times you do this, and it's so boring. You know when you're driving home, and you're kind of blacked out, but you're not paying attention to what you're doing. You're sober, you know, you're sober, but it's just secondhand. You're just kind of like, and then you self-actualize, and you're like, holy shit, how am I still alive? I was on autopilot. Whoa, that is this game, but with added sleepiness because I was struggling to stay awake because it's so boring. Which sucks because there's still moments of platforming scattered throughout, and I'm not saying they're good, they're really not, but they're better than the beat 'em up sections. There was this moment where I was playing and I fell through the floor, and I just kept falling forever and ever. This moment where characters were talking, but instead of the cutscene playing, I was just watching this screen. Say it with me now. Forever and ever. Pac-Man World Rally is the final installment in the World franchise, and it is an underrated, underappreciated gem of a game. It is a kart racer with all the Pac-Man characters you love. It even has the prince from Katamari, which, yes, we're going to cover the Katamari series in a future video. Like and subscribe. The music is all remixes, and they're all bangers. The map designs are mostly top-notch. There's this one that takes place in Japan and has a big old rainbow, and it's pretty cool. A forest one, and I love my video game forest. There's this one that takes place in a desert mountain, and you're going down all fast, and oh no, there I go. There's this one also in a forest, but now it's spooky. There's this snow one, and you got these little penguins zooming on by. There's this super trippy clown one that gets you spinning all whoopity-doo-doo-doo-doo. A race through a literal Pac-Man maze, which I personally suck at, but I think it's a cool idea. This one takes place in the Galaga universe, and the best for last, the fucking Katamari map with the king and his big ass dick bulge. This is just a handful of the maps. There's not that many more, but what is here is honestly some really fun, creative, fast-paced races. And the big reason I had so much fun with this game is that the mechanics and controls are surprisingly really good. It's so hard to get kart racers right. I think it's an unspoken rule that you got your Mario Karts, you got your Crash Nitro Karts, you got your Mario Karts, but I'm kind of disappointed to hear that Pac-Man World Rally doesn't get talked about like ever. Are the power-ups just reskins of the one from every other kart racer? Sure. Of course. Are the controls really good because they basically copy everything that Mario Kart does right? Sure, why not? But it also adds its own twist. You got these pellets that you can eat that fill up this meter, and then when that's full, you can turn into a giant Pac-Man, and the other racers turn into ghosts, and you can fucking munch on them. I think it's a perfect way to round out the Pac-Man World legacy, and it saves it from going out with a fart because of Pac-Man World 3. But that right there is the Pac-Man World series in a nutshell. There are a ton of other Pac-Man games out there, but for now, let's just kick back and enjoy the sunset on Pac Village.